Welcome to the Author's Den, a place where we encourage reading and writing, a place where you can meet authors and book illustrators, a place to get your questions answered about writing, publishing, and promoting your book. Hello and welcome to the Author's Den. Glad you could be with us today. My guest is Terrence Shulman, author of Something for Nothing. And Terrence, it's nice to see you again.
You too, Mike. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself to begin with.
Well, I've been a Southfield resident now for a little over 4 years, and I'm a native Detroiter. I've been an attorney for 12 and a half years and a therapist for about 8.5. I'm also a recovering shoplifter, and that is my claim to fame or infamy, as it were. And I'm the proud author of a book that came out late 2003, early 2004, called Something for Nothing, Shoplifting, Addiction, and Recovery. I myself have been in recovery from addictive compulsive shoplifting for approximately 14 years. And a lot of people say shoplifting. I didn't know that could be an addiction. I thought that was just plain thievery. And it's a controversial topic, but in my own path toward understanding why I did what I did, mainly from my late teen years through my mid-20s, I'm 40 now, I discovered through counseling and research that this was actually an addictive behavior and that a lot of people needed some form of help. And how I got help was actually by starting a support group right here in Southfield in 1992 called CASA, C-A-S-A, Kleptomaniacs and Shoplifters Anonymous.
You say you're a counselor and an attorney, and yet you had a problem with shoplifting when you were younger. Were you arrested?
Yes, I've been arrested 2 times in my life. The first time was in 1986 when I was about 21, and the second and last time was in 1990 when I was about 25. And I got into this craziness for a lot of different reasons, never to make excuses, but as I found in counseling, I had a lot of unexpressed and unresolved anger in my life. In my understanding, stemming a lot from my father's and mother's divorce when I was 10. My father was an alcoholic, and I had a lot of anger toward him, a lot of sadness over the breakup of the marriage, and I didn't really get to deal with that a lot. And I also took on the role of a caretaker for my mother and for my younger brother, and I think I kind of grew up a little bit too early. And I just stuffed a lot of my feelings and my issues, and they kind of manifested late in my high school years through shoplifting. So particularly when I felt like things were not going my way and I didn't know how to cope with that, and I had chronic feelings that life had been unfair, and in some sense I didn't even realize it. I was feeling entitled to something more from life. And the way that manifested, quite frankly, was through shoplifting. It wasn't anything I sat down and planned to do. It just started to occur spontaneously. And what I noticed is it gave me a bit of a rush or a high. As I like to say, most of us as human beings do like to get something for nothing, whether a freebie, a bargain, a deal. I think there's something in human nature where we get really excited about that. Not everybody will cross over a line to take something for nothing, but I think a lot of people are vulnerable, and I certainly was. And once I started doing this behavior, of course I knew it was wrong, and I felt some guilt or shame after. But it had a power of its own. And as I kept doing this secretive behavior, I kept feeling more afraid and more ashamed, and it kind of fed on itself, and it really took root. I appreciate what you were saying there about the psychology behind why people might do this. But I'm kind of curious, you also say that you're an attorney. Right.
How did this impact you becoming a lawyer?
As a matter of fact, during the middle of my law school from 88 to 91, I was arrested for that second and final time, right in the middle of law school. 1990, I was about 25. I was in the middle of my second of 3 years, and that is when I finally got into the counseling. Actually, I got into counseling right before that arrest because I knew I was out of control with my behavior. At that point, I was very depressed and frankly contemplating suicide. That's how bad it got, living this secret life. I was fortunate that I was truthful on my application to be a licensed attorney, and I divulged that, number one, I had been in counseling, number two, I had a criminal record, and I had a series of 3 interviews before the Character and Fitness Committee that investigates whether somebody who graduates law school can actually be a licensed attorney. And I was fortunate that they gave me a fair shake. In addition, I had an employer who was a very well-respected attorney. I was a law clerk after I graduated, not a licensed attorney yet, but I worked for a very respected attorney who happened to know me as a neighbor growing up in Detroit. So he spoke very well on my behalf and was able to present my situation in a very unique context, and I narrowly was approved for practice to the state bar. It was determined, and I think wisely so, that my stealing was not basically out of some personality disorder or a character defect where I was an inherently dishonest person, because I was not. And actually, most people who do shoplift are actually very honest people. They would not necessarily take from you or me individually, or if you dropped a $20 bill on the ground, they would probably return it to you. They wouldn't necessarily steal from the workplace or from a stranger's home. It's a very odd kind of behavior. And we were able to basically demonstrate that through good letters from my therapist. And I also was real clear that while part of my shoplifting was actually due to just stress in general that I was going through personally in my life, I knew that I had to start off gradually as a lawyer and not take on too much stress. Being a lawyer, being a human being these days is a stressful job. And I've done a lot of work over the last 12 years in monitoring my stress level.
Well, how does the success of the book and speaking, is that stressful?
It is. There's an old joke that even good stress is stress. There's actually two words. There's distress, which is when bad things are happening and you're stressed out, and there's eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S. So when you're getting married, when you're having a baby, when you're moving into a new home, starting a new job, getting a promotion, having a book published, going on Oprah, like I was on Oprah recently, and that still registers in the body as stress, and we have to be very careful about our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. Any kind of change can create turbulence. You've often heard the story, I'm sure, of the recovering addict who sabotages his or her recovery just as things are going well. And there's a number of reasons for that, perhaps. One is stress, and another might be they're really just not used to things going well. They get frightened, they get afraid on some level. Maybe they don't think they deserve things to go well. Maybe they can't handle the responsibilities that go with life going. There's a lot of different issues. And I'm in that phase of my recovery after 14 years where I truly feel that things are going very well for me. I've been newly married in the last 3 years. My book has been out. I'm developing a thriving counseling practice. And I have to be careful. I have to be careful not to wreck it.
I've really noticed in the newspapers a lot of stories about gambling, about shoplifting. Can you talk generally about maybe clients or cases that you're familiar with in the press that we might know about?
Well, I will talk about a case most recently, I think, that a lot of our audience viewers probably have heard about on the news or on the radio or read about in the paper. There was a chief financial officer for the city of Grosse Pointe who in late December 2004 was arrested in St. Clair Shores for allegedly shoplifting a $4 package of sausage from a Kroger's supermarket. It made the paper, in part because he's a public figure, and in part because it created an air of suspicion that he might also be embezzling money or doing something dishonest at his very important position as the chief financial officer for the city of Grosse Pointe. The common thought is, well, why would this guy take a $4 packet of sausage? He's making 70+ grand a year. He's got so much to lose. But it doesn't surprise me, because most of the people I've come to meet and know over the last 12 years, either through the support group or through counseling, have money in their pocket. Most of my clients are middle class to upper middle class, and I've also had some very wealthy clients as well. People are people, and a lot of times it isn't about the money. Gambling addiction, a lot of people think gambling is about money. It has nothing to do with money. Poor people gamble, rich people gamble. It really has nothing to do with the money. It's about the chase, the high of the chase, the risk of losing whatever, about numbing out and distracting oneself from painful feelings or issues. And oftentimes all addictions, and particularly shoplifting, are what I call a cry for help, an unconscious cry for help. And when I read a story like this gentleman, my first thought is, wow, I wonder what kind of pain he's in his life. I wonder what this shoplifting is about. what kind of stress he's under. I wonder what his cry for help really is.
You mentioned CASA. Talk about this organization, how it came about, what your role is.
Okay. Well, I'm the founder of CASA.
What's it stand for?
CASA stands for Kleptomaniacs and Shoplifters Anonymous. It is a support group similar to Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, similar to any of the other support groups, except it's not officially affiliated with the 12-step groups. It's a little more loosely run. But the premise is the same. It's a group where people can come in a safe and confidential setting on an ongoing basis to talk to and to listen to people who have relatively similar issues.
Why did you start this organization? Are people taking advantage of it?
More and more we are getting courts who are learning about this as a feasible kind of treatment alternative for some shoplifters, some people who steal, not everybody. I would say approximately 75 to 80% of our members are court ordered. A very small percentage of people come on their own, unfortunately. Some do, either after an arrest but before they're ordered, or if there's another negative consequence occurring. But we welcome everyone. We average about 20 to 25 people a meeting on Wednesday night. We meet at Clean House Holistic Treatment Center near 10 and a half and Telegraph on Swanson Road, and it's just a great group.
Well, how did the book come about? Talk about that.
Worked on it on and off for about 7 years. I had one early offer back in, I think, 96 or 97 to publish it, but at that time I didn't know if that was the publisher I wanted to go with, nor did I think we could agree upon the kind of book that it was going to be. They wanted really at that point for the book just to be all about me and an in-depth kind of tell-all about my life. I was willing to include some of that in the book, but I also wanted to include other people's stories that I had met through the group, and a little bit of kind of statistical and theoretical information, and some tips on starting a group, and maybe some exercises that people could do. And we couldn't agree on it, so I let that offer pass. And for the next 5 to 6, 7 years, I actually pursued other publishers, and much to my chagrin, I got a lot of nibbles but no bites. So finally, about a year and a half ago, I decided to self-publish through what we call a print-on-demand publisher. Basically, you pay a publisher to publish the book, and you do most of the promoting yourself. They'll help you a little, and you can order books from them relatively cheaply and sell them on your own, or people can buy from them, or they can buy it from Amazon. And I found that was a way to at least just get it out there, because I was getting restless not having a publisher, and I just said, I got to get this book out here. Even though I feel like I've been an expert, relatively speaking, on the subject for many years, I've found that most people won't look at you unless you have a PhD, which I don't have, or a book out on some subject in order to be considered an expert. And I wanted to have that next level of respectability. I had my wife and her book club do an early proof of my manuscript. Then I went through a few different local editors, before I settled on one who was a good match. I had a friend of mine design the cover. I had another friend take my photograph for the back photo, and I did have a proofreader after the editing, so I had a lot of help, and I had put a little bit of money away to actually get it done. And in case people are interested, you can my book is approximately 200 pages, and it costs approximately $500 to publish it, and another $500 to edit it, and about another $500 for the cover design and the photo and some other things. So, you know, that's roughly between $1,000 and $2,000 is what it can cost to self-publish a book.
Now that you have the book out, is it still a print on demand, or can people buy it in a store? Or?
It is mainly a print on demand, meaning people will buy it mostly from me. I have a website, shopliftersanonymous.com or somethingfornothingbook.com. So people will poke around on the website on their own under shoplifting, addiction, kleptomania, or something, or my name if they hear my name, and they'll find the website. So some people order it directly from me. Some people go to infinitypublishing.com, which is my publisher. Some will go to amazon.com, borders.com, barnesandnoble.com. It is in a few local bookstores.
Let's talk some more about the promotion and publicity for the book. What have you done?
Well, what haven't I done? I've really done about everything except actually hire formally a publicist. What I've done primarily is try to get radio interviews, magazine and newspaper interviews, write articles, TV interviews, and I've done a lot of that. I have an excellent website where the book is featured and easy to order. It's a lot of word of mouth. Certainly, again, being on Oprah is about the best kind of publicity one can get.
Tell us about that. How did that come about? And what was that like, too?
I was on Oprah. It first aired on September 21st, 2004. And that had been years in the making. I had actually written her and emailed her over the course of several years, thinking that I had a pretty good topic that she had never touched on. I've been on a lot of TV programs prior to Oprah. I've been on the Today Show, the Early Show, 48 Hours even did a big piece in 2002. So it's not like I was totally new to this, but Oprah has her own standards, and she's kind of like the creme de la creme. I got a call in early August of 2004 saying that they were doing a show on secret lives of housewives. The first part was about shoplifting addiction, and the second part was about gambling addiction. And I was featured on the first part, and I connected them with a woman from Philadelphia who I became acquainted with through my email support group, who was willing to go on. And I came on as the expert, and my book was up there on the television screen for a couple seconds.
Pretty exciting, huh?
The title was mentioned, my name was mentioned, and I eventually came up on stage with Oprah. And you know, it was a really good piece. And even though Oprah didn't fully digest or understand this problem because it was so new to her, and by the way, for anybody who's wondering, Oprah is great. While I was a little nervous, I just wanted to do a good job, was more of the nervousness. I was really looking forward. I've been a fan of Oprah's. My wife flew in with me. We stayed at the hotel. They picked us up in limos. We wined and dined on the Oprah tab. It was great, and we really got to meet her after the show, and she's a very down-to-earth woman. She has a conversation with you just like we're having. You forget immediately that you're basically looking at a very powerful and wealthy woman. She's just a very wonderful, calming person. So,
what was the reaction to your appearance on Oprah?
Very good, and I'm very thankful for that, Mike, because I felt frustrated, frankly, after being kind of in this journey for about 12 years and being a therapist for 8.5. And though my book has only been published fairly recently, it's really been hard getting the word out in a way where people locally and nationally will call for actual help, either through counseling or getting on an email group or starting their own group.
It sounds like that's what you really wanted.
What I want is to start a conversation among people about this topic, and we need more research, we need more books out, we need more therapists who specialize in this, we need more support groups, we need more people feeling comfortable enough to ask questions and seek help. Many people don't even look at this as a potentially therapeutic issue. They look at it as a legal issue only, a right-wrong issue, a moral issue, and therefore, and a lot of therapists do too. So I'm trying to educate. But after the Oprah show, I wouldn't say the phone was ringing off the hook, but I actually got about 15 clients, a few locally and more out of state, from that first show. And I added a lot of people to the email group, and a few people bought the book from me directly, and more bought it from my publisher, or Amazon.com. I think I sold roughly 1,000 copies of my book after the Oprah showing.
What would you hope that people would gain from your book?
Well, hope and knowledge, for one. The book is ideally for people who have this problem, and not just shoplifting, but any kind of addictive theft behavior. The book has a lot of different pieces in it. It has my story, condensed to 40 pages, and 3 other people's stories who've been in the CASA group over the years. It has statistical information, not that I've compiled, although there are some statistics that I have taken from the CASA group demographics over the 10 or so years it's been in existence, but statistics that have been researched, from around the country, one of which is 1 out of 11 people in America shoplift. That's 9% of the population, or approximately 25 million Americans. I'm not saying that all those people are addicted to it, but 9% of the population is shoplifting on some level. And that 90% of Americans have shoplifted at least one time in their lives. So it's a behavior that's more prevalent than we know, and there's a lot of different reasons why people do it. The book is also ideal for family members or friends who suspect or know that their loved one has a problem and they want to understand more, because there's very few books about this. It's also ideal for anybody working in the legal system, whether an attorney, prosecutor, judge, probation officer, parole officer. It's ideal for therapists and counselors, ministers, and people of the cloth.
Let me interrupt you
Yeah,
for a second.
and even people in the retail industry who want to understand a little more what makes people tick. And by the way, I am never saying that people should not be arrested and held accountable. My concern is that people ultimately get help if they're recognized and thought to need help, rather than using a cookie cutter approach and just punishing everybody in the same way. Some people really are crying out for help and they never get it.
The one thing that I wanted to back up a little bit, and I think I'm hearing you say this, is that you can't really generalize about why a person steals.
No, you can't. And actually, research is showing that there's absolutely no typical profile of a shoplifter. We used to think that maybe it was more women than men, and actually statistics are showing that it's about equal. We used to think it was more young people than middle-aged to older people, whereas actually 75% of people who are arrested are adults above the age of 18. We used to think maybe that it was people who didn't have money. Well, first of all, there's never an excuse for shoplifting, even if you don't have money. You know, that's what I always tell people. We always feel like we're stretched for cash, so it's more of a perceived lack of money than actually, for most people, lack of money. But even then, only roughly 5 to 10% of people who shoplift are doing it purely for economic motivation, meaning they don't have the money. Sometimes we think that most of the people who steal are plain thieves, sometimes what we call boosters, people who are selling what they steal, working in rings. They make up roughly, again, 5 to 10% of the people who shoplift. They do make a big dent, though, and this is mostly the population that store security and loss prevention are concerned with, because they keep coming back and they keep developing their own sophisticated defenses to the increasingly sophisticated security. And a lot of what we're doing, and I think we tend to do this in our world, is we try to tackle the symptoms, but we're not getting to a lot of the roots of the problem. Why is there so much shoplifting? We can increase security systems all we want and try to put people away with harsher penalties in the courts. But the bulk of people who shoplift, about 75%, are people who are actually crying for help, psychologically or emotionally, and they're getting no help.
I think for me, something that intrigues me is the concept that a person may steal because they feel entitled to it, or the title of your book, Something for Nothing. Talk a little bit about that.
The feeling of getting something for nothing is oftentimes an exhilarating feeling. And for many people, particularly the people who I think get addicted to this behavior over time, often feel as if they've been deprived of something in their life. Something has been taken away, that they haven't been given their fair due. Bad things have happened that they were not able to accept or resolve psychologically. And so when they get something for nothing, it's not only about the getting of the material thing, it's emotionally and symbolically they feel for a few seconds, maybe a few minutes, at tops a few hours, like they've made life right, that they've tipped it back into balance. Because something was taken from me, I got something for nothing, I got back at life. Or often because I overgave or I overextended myself, I'm entitled to a little something for nothing because of my overgiving or my sacrifice. So we get a lot of that too. Either I've suffered, therefore I'm entitled, or I've over-sacrificed and over-given, and I'm entitled. And these are very powerful psychological features. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just saying the way the human mind works is very incredible. And most of the clients who come to me, most of the people I've met in the group over the years, will often say, I don't know why I do this. I know it's wrong. I feel bad after I do it. I just don't know how to stop. I've tried. I've really tried. Many people have even gone to therapists and really tried to get help, and oftentimes the therapists don't know what to do with them. They'll brush it under the rug and say, well, it's probably a symptom of something else. Let's look at this something else. But you also have to look at this as a unique problem in itself. For instance, right here in Southfield, I will say, particularly as a Southfield resident now for the last 4.5 years, but also because our group has been headquartered in Southfield for 12.5 years, we have not gotten one referral from the 46th District Court. That upsets me. I recently talked to a probation officer who said she too could not believe that. It's frustrating for me to know that there are a lot of other people who could be helped, and it forces me, even though I send literature and reminders year after year to all the courts in the metro area, it frustrates me that more people are not referred to us, and also that more people don't come forward voluntarily. So my hope is one day theft behaviors will be looked at through a lens to determine what's going on. I'm not saying there are not people who are just doing it for the money or who are criminal-minded. There's certainly people who shoplift, roughly 5 to 10%, who are addicted to drugs, alcohol, or gambling, and are stealing from stores or from work to fund their underlying addiction. But what I'm trying to do is educate that most of the people who shoplift or even steal from work are people really like you and me who somehow are vulnerable and get into this behavior, and it snowballs well beyond what they've ever intended.
And maybe a symptom of some underlying problem or feelings that they're having.
Absolutely, absolutely. And never to make excuses, because I do believe in accountability. There has to be legal consequence. But one of the things I want to see is that everybody be treated with humanity and dignity.
Why don't you just review for us again how people can contact you or your group and what you hope to do for them?
Well, I'm trying to provide a variety of options for people. One is the book, Something for Nothing, Shoplifting, Addiction, and Recovery, which I really think is a great book. I'm not just saying that because I wrote it, but also because it's the only book out there that I know about shoplifting, addiction, and recovery. So I encourage people to buy the book. They can order that from me by calling me at 248-358-8508 or going to the website shopliftersanonymous.com. Also, what I offer is expert counseling for people who have shoplifting or theft-related problems. And they can contact me again by that number or by my website, or they could go to TerrenceShulman.com, has my resume and my background and my professional experience. They're welcome, if they're interested about the group, CASA, Kleptomaniacs and Shoplifters Anonymous, to call me to learn about what groups are available, when they're available, and how to attend. Those are open groups. They're essentially free. We ask for a $1 to $2 donation kind of thing like AA does, and they're safe, confidential, and anonymous. Another thing that I do actually is, as an attorney, I do represent people on various criminal defense matters, particularly shoplifting, embezzlement, and theft offenses. And I also am available as an expert witness. I got a call the other day from an attorney who referred his client to me. She had been a chronic shoplifter who was, again, just arrested while on probation for a shoplifting offense. So he saw the article in the paper in late December and picked up the phone and told his client about me. And she ended up coming to the group the other night with her husband. And I'm looking forward to working with her in counseling. And then a couple other things I'm really excited about. I'm also in the early stages of developing a consulting practice with the retail industry and corporations who are concerned about loss prevention. I have a lot of innovative, progressive ideas that I would just love the opportunity to try out to help deter loss from outside and inside a company, and as well as educate them about referral sources where people could go so they don't keep coming back to strike again. And finally, I'm very excited that in fall 2005, likely late September, early October, I am co-organizing the first ever, as far as I know, international conference on theft, addictions, and disorders in downtown Detroit. And I'm going to be publicizing that throughout the spring and the summer, and I'm really excited. I don't know how many people will get. I'll be happy with 50 to 100. So it'll be open to naturally professional people, therapists, people in the legal system, ministers, people who suffer from these behaviors, anybody who's a student of human psychology, and also the recovery crowd who are definitely out there and interested. So we'll be hopefully letting you know about that too.
I look forward to that. Terry, thanks a lot for making it out today to be on the Author's Den. I look forward to reading more of your book and following your career.
Mike, you'll see me again because my next book hopefully will be out in 2005 on employee theft problems, called tentatively Biting the Hand That Feeds, an employee theft epidemic in America.
That's a good title. Thank you again.
Thank you.